This isn't really about the denial of service attack that hit the Internet Archive. It's not even about the hacking. It's about the fact that for about 2 weeks, the Internet Archive was completely down, and it came back in a, let's just say, half state, a state where you could read some things, but you couldn't listen to others. In other words, limping, not itself, for a while. It's not really informative or helpful for me to give my thoughts on that aspect of things, on what hacking exactly means. Instead, I want to focus on what it was like to have something I've been pouring my life into go offline completely for 2 weeks, after over 10 years of spending all of my time on it. There's lessons there, lessons far beyond any specifics about how things were up or down, but about coping, about understanding your relationship to your work, and coming to terms with the unpredictability of life. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, a podcast about technology, history, and getting myself out of debt. Thanks to Jeff Atwood and the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. To understand what it felt like to not do something, I need to explain what I was doing. My job at the Internet Archive has several areas. Some of them became part of my job over the years. Others were there from the beginning, and some grew into positions and processes that I never would have dreamed I was in charge of. On a pure communication level, I have been interacting with people on social media and emails, talking about possibilities, planning projects, and helping them transfer data to the archive. I have helped people bring physical items to the archive, and I have been able to work with folks who are uploading to the archive and help them do that project better. I have been involved in some of the company communication, helping with the Slack or the Mastodon instance. Both of those continued and have never stopped. But the vast majority of my work, day in and day out, is dealing with spam, with classification of items, with the creations of collections and sub-collections, putting all of these items into something coherent, and running quality checks and interacting with uploaders to help them make their contributions better. The archive, being somewhat unique in many ways, requires a whole bunch of assumptions, and it's always been one of my missions, I guess the word is, to make sure that people know that there is a way to do things that will make things easier for them. So, on a given day, I was doing between, let's say a few thousand to tens of thousands of transactions. At the time of the outage, I was in the process of a 1.5 million item reclassification and dealing with 5 to 10,000 review spams every day, where somebody has been using processes and programming and APIs to upload thousands of malware links. When I say that, I can assure you we were having meetings over how to fix that from a deeper level and not just have me doing it. But that project and all the other projects came to a screeching halt. Suddenly, I wasn't spending hours of every day sorting magazines or working through videos and adding descriptions. I wasn't classifying uploads into potential new collections. I wasn't making collections. I was doing nothing that affected the look of the site. There was almost no site to look at. Let's go in stages. Emotionally, I was fine. I wasn't somebody who was running a train as a conductor and the train wasn't moving and I was in a state of panic or misery. I was more understanding that inevitabilities happen, that over time, the potential for such a large attack service to have issues was basically going to happen sometime, an inevitability that would affect the site being up. Upon the site being down, my first thought was for data integrity, to find out if we had lost any of the data, 150 plus petabytes, that people had uploaded or that the archive had consumed and created and ingested. I had immediate conversations about that. That, to me, is critical. That's not coping. That's understanding the extent of the damage. If there's flooding, you look for damage to materials, but also whether or not a structure has integrity issues. You try to figure out what got hit, what needs to be dried, and in the same way, you look at files and start devising a plan when you come back up to see if anything has been modified. I also switched into a support and discussion mode. That is, checking with my colleagues to make sure everybody was informed, that everybody was on the same page, that questions could be answered. Folks who were not connected in departments that would have any insight felt that they were being informed, and to listen to what people were saying, what they were seeing out there, working, in other words, in a sort of protective wagon circle to make sure that everybody was handling things. My work only affects whether or not I can move items. Other people have financial situations where they have contracts saying that they would return things in a given time, or they would have to continue doing their work without direct linking to the site. Establishing that, I was able to philosophically look at where I've been. I think ever since my heart attack, I have realized the fundamental transience of life, that things are here and then they are not, and their existence or lack of existence is not on your responsibility. We can argue over whether or not hacking falls under that, but hacking and denial of service are events, macro events. They're not dissimilar to power outages or earthquakes or changes in how a building is functioning that could lead to a downtime. Just because it was one thing versus another doesn't mean the same basic responses apply. Having yourself be a separate entity from the work you do and the work you have done, from the life you live and the life you have lived, is, to me, a critical part. If a person doesn't get to do their thing, and believe me, I've lived my life so that in my teenage years and even into my 20s, I had things I did, and not having them turned me into half a person. I felt like I was missing out on being me if I didn't have those external things. Here's an exercise. Can you lie on your bed for 2 hours and just rest? Can you sit in the middle of the day, lie down, and not feel like you're letting others down, that you are failing to be yourself, and probably most critically, that you don't like being here? You do not like being with yourself. You need something else. You're certainly entitled to have a negative reaction to the idea of doing nothing, but it's really important to be able to reach equilibrium. I've had friends, really good friends, tell me that I am the most busy person they know. But each of those things I do that keep me busy are ongoing linear works, taking a whole bunch of the outside world and making it digital, working with people and talking to people to answer their questions. Every finished day is a work, a project in itself. Regardless of what happens on a Saturday, if I finished my Friday, that's my finished Friday. Nothing can take that away. That is a moment in time. And every day that the Internet Archive existed, millions of people have been to it. Literally millions. Thousands of people reading books, thousands of people playing video games, and they woke up, they had it, they did it, it's done. The work was done. Considering a project or an entity or any sort of work as only successful if it is persistent, permanent, and infinite is a fool's game. It's the game you play that can drive you into the ground, having felt a sad failure at the end. I look back over the path of my life and my career, and things were done. There were moments, highlights, and lowlights that were parts of immutable projects, completed and done, and me ready for more, but not required to do more. I made 3 documentaries. Then I finished, after deciding I couldn't do 3 more. I've given presentations and speeches at hacker conferences. Now I do that extremely rarely, if at all. But I'm happy about the recordings of me throughout my 20s and 30s and 40s, where I was able to affect a crowd or make statements. I enjoyed those times. I enjoyed the travel. I enjoyed the people I met, the outfits I wore, the incredible responses I would get sometimes. Responses of happiness or tears, quizzical and critical. It was lived. So at a time when the archive, my beautiful, wonderful job, was at a mostly standstill for the stuff that was public-facing, I rested. I let those parts of me, those fighting, intense parts of me focused on the project, rest, put down their sword and shields, look out over the sky, and say, what a beautiful, glorious night. And let's see what tomorrow brings. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It. Thanks to James Bekoyanu, Ernie Hershey, Michael Rubin, Dilip Reddy, Sean Kelly, Trixie the Cat, Martin, Symbionce, Benjamin Guts, Joey Mink, and Anonymous, along with the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who are supporting me and helping me get out of debt. Even as this is recording, the Internet Archive is back. It's in a half state. It'll be in a full state. And I, frankly, have enjoyed refreshing my relationship and realizing where I'm needed and where things are appreciated out in the world.